If you have a blazing sword, shining armor, and ride around on a spectacular mount, you might be a paladin. But you also might be this guy. Or you might also look like something like this. Hi, I'm AP Townley, and this is Roleplay Culture. So the Paladin, one of, if not the, most powerful class in D&D 5e. Their martial capabilities, spellcasting, who am I kidding, using for smites, sheer damage potential, and righteous sex appeal. These guys just ooze main character syndrome. They are very strong and very popular to play. They also happen to be my least favorite class in 5th edition. And yes, I know how unpopular that statement is. We're not here to talk about all my grief with the Paladin. Instead, we're trying to pin down which is the best and which is the worst subclass for the Paladin in 5th edition. Subclasses, as we remember, are a way for the parent class to niche down into a certain theme through specific abilities. This choice is made between levels 1 and 3, and for the Paladin, which are called their Sacred Oaths, they choose it at level 3. This will be an interesting exercise, as some of the problems I have with the Paladin are with their subclasses and how they kind of fit together with the parent class. So where to begin? Which subclass will champion us to the heavens, and which will have us fall from grace? Now these are going to be just my opinions. I think any subclass can find a home at the right table in the right campaign. Though many paladins are shining knights of virtue, some revel in battle and conquest.
I am inevitable.
And when it comes between peace and conquest, well, conquest always wins out. Now, many of you are probably wondering, where's the Oath of Vengeance? That's the best, right? No, it isn't. I hate that subclass. Which I realize is a bit hypocritical on my part, since first Paladin I ever played was in 5th edition, was a Vengeance Paladin. That is besides the point. The word Paladin has meaning. It refers to the Knights of Charlemagne, also known as the 12 Peers, who were very similar to the Knights of the Round Table with their honor and virtue and martial prowess. Charlemagne, first Holy Roman Emperor, 8th century king, pretty important guy. Seen as a Renaissance man who was sophisticated for his time in athleticism, knowledge, courtly manners. The idea of a paladin sworn to vengeance seems very antithesis. A fallen paladin, or an oathbreaker maybe, just isn't very paladin-y. Now you might also be thinking, wait, conquest doesn't sound very paladin-y either. Well, then you take a closer look at the Carolingian Empire, it makes a little more sense. History might portray Charlemagne as a Renaissance man, and legend depicts his paladins as shining knights of valor. But the truth is, he was just as much a warmonger and conqueror, and his knights were probably right there with him. They both just got that glossy paint job of history and myth. So conquest is in reality probably the most accurate depiction of the paladin. And in gameplay, I think it just edges out the competition. We get the ribbon feature of our tenets, which are douse the flames of hope, rule with an iron fist, and strength above all, which has serious villain vibes. These guys lean very heavily into the law and order, especially if it's their law and their order. At 3rd level, we get oath spells. Kind of like a cleric who get 2 spells per level that we always have prepared. Now this is a big ask. Paladins generally want to spend their spell slots on smiting. So to use those slots for casting actual spells, they need to be winners. So what do we get? We start off with the command spell, not a bad control spell, but we get Armor of Agathis, which I absolutely love on a paladin. This spell gives 5 temporary hit points. A little added toughness isn't a bad thing, especially for a paladin. Because they are mad, multiple ability score dependent, they tend to not have a very high constitution, as I would like anyway. And therefore not as many hit points as is probably comfortable for a frontline combatant. But it's the second feature of this spell that I really want. As long as you have even one of these temporary hit points, whenever something hits you with a melee attack, it takes 5 cold damage. So if a cold ball stabs you for 3 damage, it will take 5 damage in return. And if another stabs you, it will take another 5 cold damage. This spell upcasts very well, adding 5 more temporary hit points and 5 more cold damage for every spell level. So a 3rd level casting of this will give you 15 temporary hit points and do 15 cold damage every time someone hits you, as long as you have at least one of these temporary hit points remaining. We also get Hold Person, which can give auto crits, which paladins love. Spiritual Weapon, one of the best cleric spells. Bonus actions essentially weaponized with this. They can bestow Curse, not too bad as a debuffer. But the Fear spell is pretty interesting. A cone effect that frightens opponents and forces them to run away. Not my favorite spell, but it's going to become a little bit more important later. Dominate Beast, pretty niche, although if you can take over a T-Rex and send it after your enemies, that'd be cool. Stone Skin, terrible. Ends up on a lot of these lists. What's up with that? Cloud Kill, okay AoE spell. Does hang around for a while. This is a spell that just screams war crimes. And then there's Dominate Person, another good control spell, if you can make it stick. Also at 3rd level, we get our Channel Divinity feature with 2 options. Remember, Channel Divinity comes back on a short rest. And there's no turn undead, it's just, your subclass, it's just what your subclass gives you. I had a really hard time with that one, especially coming off a different edition. First, we have Conqueror's Presence. As an action, every creature we wish within 30 feet makes a wisdom save or become frightened for a minute. They get to repeat that save at the end of each turn. Now let's discuss the fright condition, shall we? Frightened creatures can't move closer to what is frightening them. That's us, by the way. They also have disadvantage against all ability checks and attack rolls while they can see you. It's not just against you, but all of them, as long as you can see you. This is a nasty ability. I don't think people appreciate its value enough. We also have Guided Strike, which is a pretty common channel divinity. There's a couple of cleric subclasses get it. When we make an attack roll, we spend the channel divinity to get a +10 on your attack after you roll, but before the result. On a cleric, it's pretty meh, but on a paladin, definitely good. Try to force smites through when you really need it. We get 7th level, we get Aura of Conquest. This aura extends 10 feet from us, and the 18th level extends up to 30. If a creature is frightened of you, its speed is reduced to 0 if it's in the aura. And if it ends its turn there, it takes psychic damage equal to half your paladin level. There's no limit to how often this works. As long as it's frightened and in front of you, it's going to take damage. We do have to keep them frightened though, but we have tools for that. Conquering Presence, and at 9th level, the Fear spell. It's a pretty unique lockdown ability that you don't see too much, especially with a paladin. But useful. We want nothing more than to keep our enemies in front of us so we can beat the snot out of them. At 15th level comes Scornful Rebuke. Should someone dare to strike you with an attack, they shall be rebuked with psychic damage equal to our charisma modifier. Yeah, there's no limit to this. As long as you're not incapacitated, doesn't even have to be in melee. You don't have to see them. Doesn't require your reaction. Every time you take a hit, they take damage. It's not a lot of damage, but it can add up. Coupled with the Armor of Agathis, you're becoming a real pain to fight. Toxic, even. At 20th level, if we ever get there, we become an Invincible Conqueror. As an action, once per long rest, you can transform for a minute and gain several abilities. We have resistance to all damage, like just all of it. Great for Armor of Agathis. It will make this spell and us last a lot longer. If we take the attack action, we get an extra attack along with the normal attack, and our melee attacks have a critical range of 19 to 20. Paladins always want to crit. It's a capstone feature, but one heck of a one. And this is a real toxic kind of character with all this clapback feature and lockdown abilities. Will probably really tick off your teamium. But it is a pretty unique gameplay style and would definitely be successful. But if that is the best, I'd argue it's a pretty tight race. Then what's the worst? So enters the peeping toms of D&D, the Oath of the Watchers.
Look, you stupid bastard, you've got no arms left.
Yes, I have.
Look!
It's just a flesh wound.
These paladins protect the world from extraplanar threats. Most paladins don't like undead or fiends, but these guys don't like any of them. Fae, aberrations, even celestials. We get a ribbon feature with their tenets, vigilance, loyalty, and discipline. Very guard of the watch kind of character. At 3rd level, we get our Oath spells, starting with Alarm and Detect Magic. I love these spells as rituals, but Paladins can't do rituals. So, yeah. Next is See Invisibility, niche but useful when you need it, and Moonbeam, one of the better Druid concentration spells. It does require an action to cast and an action to move it around the battlefield, which can be a tough choice for such martially focused characters. But Paladins are often the subject of the haste spell. And using your hasted action, which is usually quite limited, to move the Moonbeam around isn't the worst use of it. Counterspell is always a great spell to have in a party. Non-detection is also pretty niche. Aura of Purity gives resistance to you and your allies to a bunch of nasty conditions. Definitely a good thing to have at 13th level. Banishment's very on-brand, but you might have trouble making it stick. Hold Monster can give auto crits, which, again, Paladins love, but again, might have trouble making it stick. And Scry is a pretty good spy spell. Also, at 3rd level comes our Channel Divinity. Watcher's Will allows us, as an action, to choose a number of creatures within 30 feet of us equal to our Charisma modifier. That will, for a minute, have advantage on Intelligence, Wisdom, and Charisma saving throws. At first glance, this seems pretty good, but if you really think about it, there are a lot of limits here. It takes an action to set up, only lasts a minute, only applies to mental saving throws. You really need some foreknowledge to make good use of this. Sure, when the dragon drops out of the sky and hits you with his frightful presence, you'll be glad to have this. Elsewise, it's going to take some real doing to kind of make it work. Abjure the Extraplanar lets us, with an action, force creatures with the Aberration, Celestial, Elemental, Fiend, or Fey types within 30 feet make Wisdom saving throws or be turned for a minute. Turned creatures, remember, have to spend their turn basically just running away from you. This is a large group of creature types to be able to target. Some, like the Aberrations and the Fiends, make good villains, but again, this could be pretty niche. You could go multiple game sessions easily without encountering any of these creatures. Don't get me wrong, being able to clear out a whole group of bearded devils could be huge. But there's not a lot of consistency here. The Conquest Paladin is going to be frightening everyone they can, and if they can't do that, they have Guided Strike to fall back on. And that's always going to be useful. They're always going to find moments to use their Channel Divinity. Not sure about the Watchers. At 7th level, we get Aura of the Sentinel. Those within 10 feet, including us, get a bonus to the initiative equal to our proficiency modifier, which will be 3 at this point and going up to 6. This is pretty decent. I don't usually like the Paladin aura effects because I think they encourage the party to clump together into a nice, juicy, fireball-friendly target. But this helps ensure your party goes first in combat and reacts better and move as necessary before the enemy. The Paladin often dumps decks as well, so a boost to their initiative would be nice. This aura, as well, extends to 30 feet at 18th level. 15th level gives Vigilant Rebuke. With a reaction, when a creature within 30 feet of us succeeds on an Intelligence, Wisdom, and Charisma saving throw, we can deal the one that forced that saving throw amount of force damage equal to 2d8 plus our Charisma modifier. It's nice. But again, how often is it going to come up? Probably more often at this level than most. But that damage is probably only going to be 12 or so. Not sure if that's going to make much difference. You may honestly have something else that is more powerful to do with your reaction than to use this. At 20th level, we finally get Mortal Bulwark, which only takes a bonus action to activate, which is nice. It can be used once per day, although it can be recharged for a 5th level spell slot, which is also pretty different. Other subclasses take an action to activate their transformation ability and can only use it once. This lasts for a minute and gives several effects. True Sight to 120 feet, good to have at this level. High level monsters have a lot of shenanigans. You have advantage on attack rolls against Aberrations, Celestials, Elementals, Fae, and Fiends. It is interesting that it says attack rolls. It doesn't specify melee, like I would expect, so spells and ranged attacks would fit into this as well. This could be great if you're fighting those creatures, but if you're going to go up against an ancient dragon, not so much. So here's what I'll say about this subclass. It's very inconsistent. If the circumstances are right, it could be amazing. But if they're not, it could almost be like you don't even have a subclass. I often say that even a weak subclass can be awesome in the right campaign, and this is never more true with the Oath of the Watcher. If you're playing in the Descent to Avernus adventure, or maybe Planescape, some adventure that will have, aberrations, celestials, you know what? I'm just going to call them ACF now, okay? Much easier. Should have done it sooner. If you play that adventure, that have a plethora of these monsters, and it does constitute quite a few of them, then the subclass will shine. But if you're playing Storm King's Thunder, it's going to suffer. So, as some advice to DMs out there, with someone maybe playing the subclass on their table, if you're being cagey about what the story might be, they might encounter, and you don't want to make adjustments, maybe pull that player aside and give them fair warning. Or, better yet, throw some of the ACAF in there to make things interesting. Let the wizard they're fighting have some elementals as guards instead of the old boring stuff. Remember, players want to have fun too. I will also say that the gulf between the best subclass, the Oath of Conquest, and the worst, the Oath of the Peeping Toms, the Watchers, Oath of the Watchers, and everything in between, it's pretty small, which makes sense. The design of the Paladin subclasses is very regimented. Oath spells, and 2 Channel to Divinity options at level 3, an aura effect at level 7, that usually increases at level 18, and a transformation at level 20. 15th level ability is the only one that really tends to vary, which personally is a bit boring for me, but that's beside the point. So I hope, despite my distaste for the Paladin, that I've given a good unbiased opinion on what I think is the best and worst subclasses for the Paladins in D&D 5e. Which would you choose? Conquest? Or maybe that old staple of the Vengeance Paladin? I don't like the flavor for the Oath of the Vengeance, but after researching the Conquest, I am kind of coming around for a more darker take on that old lawful good holy warrior. Be sure to subscribe, ring the bell, smash that like button, check out our other videos over here, and I'll see you in the parlor.